1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue podcast sound check. Friday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Friday show live. Royal Blue podcast sound check. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast. It's the Friday show. We are live and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we have Joe Thomas and Gav Buckland. Joe, how are things? All good? Good to have you back on the show after probably a week off, isn't it?
Yeah, very good. Cheers. Looking forward to the return. Looking forward to having the football back anyway. Ask me again at 5 o'clock on Saturday how I feel, and well, we'll see. But yeah, no, the minute looking forward to having it back and hopeful for Saturday.
Absolutely. Gav, we can't get rid of you. 3 times this week you've been in.
I've been sleeping in the corner.
You have?
The viewers, or we sleeping back. It makes it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, has Gav told you that he's got a book out?
Don't you know this? There's a few people I think I haven't told in the world. You know, I'll have to get my mate Arsene Wenger, tell him, won't I?
You will.
Maybe?
Needs a place on the bookshelf.
It does when it comes out. I'm getting copies, I think, hopefully today, because it doesn't come officially till Tuesday.
Yeah. What's it called again?
Good one, actually, because it's the end. So it's a homage to the fanzine.
Right.
There's all my 3 books on the Moors era have all been tributes, as it were, or, you know, to Liverpool phrases at the time, you know, money can't buy us love and boys from the blue stuff. So the end was the title. Didn't come from me, it came from Simon Hart, you know, the Everton journalist. And yeah, so it seemed, and it was the end for many different reasons, as people will see when we do the interview.
Yeah, well, you did the interview with Chris on Wednesday, which was, we recorded it wasn't live. I sat in to produce the show, and it was really interesting, to be honest, a really good insight. So keep an eye out for that one. And to be honest, the link to the pre-order sale is in the podcast description.
You can order it now. Yeah, absolutely.
So have a look in the description for that. If you fancy it, go for it. It's definitely, it'll definitely be worth a read. The podcast is definitely worth a watch.
And if you don't fancy it, still go for it.
Well, if you don't fancy it, don't go for it. But I'm sure
go for it,
it will be a Christmas stocking filler. Absolutely.
When I think of the end, I think of the opening scenes of Apocalypse Now.
Well,
the helicopters and the doors playing,
yeah.
and the napalm falling on the trees. Yeah. I mean, is that an accurate way to describe Everton of recent years? I think,
and at certain times during that period as well, because we talked about the Wimbledon game and
certainly the mid-90s.
Yeah, Chris alluded to that at the end, and not going into Wednesdays, it's a lot of the stuff, as you know, and I've referenced it while we've been doing podcasts on this season and last season. It's just history repeating itself, Joe, you know, and that, you know, if you read the book, you'll see recurring themes that apply today.
Absolutely. Okay, well, today's agenda, it is the Brentford Preview show. So, as usual, we'll pick our starting lineup for the Brentford game and we'll give our scoreline predictions. We'll also discuss the comments made by Sean Dyche in yesterday's press conference regarding the number 10 position and what that means for Everton's starting lineup against Brentford. We'll also look at this morning's breaking news on the APT ruling and what that means for Everton. So, yeah, that is all on today's show. So, stick with us for it. As always, give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. As mentioned, we are live, so get your comments in, get your questions in. As always, I will do my best to read out as many as possible. Joe, obviously the return of Premier League action. You were back at Finch Farm yesterday following the international break. I think at times you've made a big deal going to Finch Farm ahead of games or press conferences about the mood and the feel of the place at Finch Farm. So what was the mood and the feel at the place yesterday when you went?
It was cold.
Cold. Well,
Oh, it was so cold. And it wasn't even the worst of the week. You know, probably for the first time since Dyche came in and introduced his no snood policy, I was sat there thinking, I actually feel a little bit of sympathy for the players here because it was absolutely freezing. What was the mood like? Yeah, look, I think it's fairly... and, you know, we probably touched on this before the international break as well. I think there is a bit of a disconnect between perhaps the mood inside the camp and the mood in the fan base. And I think that when you have Sean Dyche, I think Sean Dyche is very much seeing the run of games going into the international break as, you know, Everton relatively resilient, lost to Southampton, but it was a late sucker punch in a game that they created enough chances to win. You know, went 5 unbeaten before that, decent point at West Ham, so, you know, 1 defeat in 7. And I think that he sees that as a stepping stone into the season and takes the positives from that. And I think it's very, very clear that perhaps, I mean, social media is only part of the fan base, but I think there are elements of the fan base that have a very different view. And, it's 1 or 2 wins in 7, some get out of jail performances and results against, Fulham in particular. West Ham to a certain extent with Pickford's save late at the end. And even, with some of the results that Dyche would say is positive, I think that Fulham, the performance was awful, and I think that still resonates within the fan base. And I think that part of the real disappointment that followed Southampton stemmed from the fact that there was a probably 90-minute lesson 7 days earlier, Fulham saying there are some problems here, make sure you learn from them. And if anything, it felt like, actually, the club have gone brilliant resilience, can't believe they kept on fighting to the end, Better got the goal, brilliant, that's going to be our takeaway from it. When actually the 90 plus 4 minutes before Better sticks that goal and probably told us more about what the club, where it is and what it should be doing. So, I think for the large part, I think that disparity remains. Like as I say, and I don't think there's a right or wrong in this. We probably want the players to be optimistic and the camp to be optimistic. And I'm not entirely sure where the players sit within this. So this is very much a kind of, this is the manager's point of view versus this is parts of the fan base's point of view. But one thing that I think was probably different to normal is that, look, Sean Dyche was always going to get asked, is this a big game? With everything that's riding on it, where Everton are, poor start to the season, big fixtures coming up. He was always going to give the same answer. If people follow my blog, when I'm at Finch Farm before, then I said he's going to get asked this, and this is going to be his answer. His answer is going to be every game's a big game. Yeah. But I did get a sense yesterday that I think he has a bit of an awareness that this is a bigger game. And okay, it's not as big as any of the previous 3 times that Brentford have been to Goodison Park. Everton could have secured safety under Frank Lampard, lost 3-2. That mad game that I still kind of feel surreal looking back on. Remember when Rondon came on in the second half? Everton losing, needing to win to stay up, 2-footed someone and then clapped the fans on the way off. It was just mad. Obviously, that was frozen a relegation battle. Season after was one of Dyche's first games. Dwight McNeil scores in the first minute. That big help in that period where kind of around Easter where it looked like Everton might claw themselves clear of trouble before they got sucked back into it. And obviously last season it was helped by the fact that they beat Forest and Liverpool in the week before, but it was the win that confirmed safety. So this isn't as big as those games, but it does feel like this is going to do a lot to set the tone for the upcoming 6 weeks. Christmas is busy. Christmas is going to be intense. There's going to be a lot of stuff on and off the pitch. There are reasons to believe, you could maybe look at it in some respects and say maybe Dyche might be helped by the magnitude of the fixtures that are coming. All of a sudden, a lot of the criticism around the style of play and the setup become more acceptable when you're the genuine underdog going up against the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool and Chelsea. And obviously, he got good results at home to Chelsea and Liverpool last season and was a very controversial VAR decision away from a good result at Arsenal as well. But I think, look, all 3 of us and everybody listening is going to say Everton could really, really do with 3 points on Saturday. And I think he knows that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I mean, I'm just going to say, Gav, just let's talk about Brentford a little bit. You can switch on Joe as well. But weirdly, if Brentford win, at Everton, they could go as high as 6th, maybe even a little bit higher, depending on goal difference. But they've had a really poor start away from home. I don't think they've won.
They've not had points, have they? All the points have been from home, I believe, isn't it?
So it's a weird dynamic with this opposition that we face. But we have got Dyche has got a good, good results against Brentford over the past couple of years.
Good results in his managerial career, 6 wins out of 7.
So
in his managerial career.
Well, how do you judge this one?
I think Joe's right. I totally agree. I listened to Dyche's press conference and the take I got from it was like Joe was like, he was asked, wasn't he? He says every game's a big game. Any Premier League manager will tell you that. And then I think he was asked about you in the context you've got a seriously hard run of fixtures coming up, and I think the emphasis he placed on it indicated to me that he thinks it's a must-ish win. The same with the word must-ish, does it? It does exist. A must-ish win. I think that the 3 previous games, they've all been near the end of the season, haven't they? And it's the timing of this. It's before Christmas, so really should, in the context of a 38 league campaign, is a game in November a must-win game? Not really, but you do because of the timing of it. I think it is, and the fact that we got a point at West Ham and we lost the Southampton games that we probably should have got possibly more from 4 points instead of 1 point. I think it's placed more emphasis on getting the win tomorrow, and I think it's a really important match. I always say that you always say like it's not must win but must not lose. It's always like at this time of the year. Possibly.
I think even,
but I think tomorrow the sense I got like and Joe said it is that actually he thinks it's a big game tomorrow, and I think that might be reflected, I think, in the atmosphere in the ground tomorrow. I think that'd be quite interesting.
Do you think a big game in the grand scheme of things in terms of the Premier League, or a big thing in the sense that to keep some of the fans on side who are actually sticking by Dyche? Because there's a lot of fans who've definitely turned, Gav. You see it all the time. You see it on social media. Excuse me. But you see it all the time, like, to keep the balance, there are fans who are backing Dyche, and rightly or wrongly, that's fair enough. But you've got to admit, if we don't win, even get a draw against Brentford on Saturday, if we don't win, you would hard pressed to find any fan who would be willing to back Dyche.
It depends on the manner of the draw, doesn't it? Perhaps, but yeah, I get that because of the games coming up. But talking about the fans are unhappy, I think Joe's just pointed it out there, didn't he? Like, and the Fulham game's a classic example. Last minute, you would think that last minute equaliser showed resilience, blah blah blah, but it was a distraction from the previous 94 minutes when we were poor, and that was the fans' take from the game, wasn't it?
I've heard plenty of people say that they left before the goal and weren't disappointed that they missed it.
The Fulham one, sorry.
Fulham, which is a concern, I think, because obviously absolutely. Everybody loves stoppage time goals that count for something, and I think it was a good moment for Beto. And that those people will be in the minority. That anyone says it is new, I think.
Yeah, no, and that's it's more performances, isn't it? Really, I think as much as anything else, that is disappointing fans at the moment who don't like Dyche and perhaps want to move on, and you can see that. To be honest with you, because the performances haven't been great against teams that we should really be doing better against in terms of metrics on possession and stuff. And he said in his press conference, was it? I can't remember, somebody saying about have we scored enough goals, and we've probably not scored enough goals either. But yeah, it's in a must-ish. It's halfway between do not lose.
Don't sit on the fence, Gav.
It's okay. It's a must-win game. I'd say tomorrow. Yeah.
I mean, we probably need to explore what must-win means because I think we probably need to set out a few truths. It's not must-win for Dyche in terms of his job. If he loses or doesn't win tomorrow, I don't think he gets sacked.
No,
I think we're all in agreement on that.
So it's not necessarily a must-win for him. If Everton don't get a good result tomorrow, they're not going to get relegated. No. It doesn't have the same implications as, say, some of the other games we've had against Brentford recently. So I think this is very much a kind of. It's almost like it's not a very tangible must-win. There's not like a physical. This is a definite going to happen after it. But it's like a mood, isn't it? It's like it's a morale point of view. I think you have and understandably so, you have a fan base, or I think we have a fan base that is concerned. And I think they've got every right to be concerned. The results haven't been the best. Performances haven't been the best. I think Dyche similarly has got every right to say, we've been here before under my under my regime, and I've always got us out of it. And there are obviously so many mitigating circumstances around his job, the limitations that he's operating within, and things like that, which do strengthen his hand when we're talking about context. But we've had the international break. There probably came a good time with where Everton were at with injuries and just momentum. We know December's going to be a lot. This is just a prelude to that December. And it's like, if they can get just almost like a preemptive strike, just put another 3 points. I tell you what changed this game a little bit for me. And the biggest result of the last weekend of domestic fixtures for me wasn't Everton getting a point at West Ham. And I actually don't think that was a bad result or bad performance. What made that frustrating was the fact that they hadn't won at Southampton the week before, and they should have done, and they should have done more to have tried to win that game. If they win at Southampton and then get a dull point at West Ham, I think the mood changes around those sets of results. Obviously they didn't, and they heaped pressure onto the next game. The big problem with the West Ham result now and this Brentford game going forward is what Ipswich did at Spurs. That's the problem, because all of a sudden, not only did they get their first win of the season and 3 points that, because of the draws that they've mustered, kind of it decimated that gap that Everton, albeit slowly, had built between them and the really troubled clubs at the start of the season. So in this 3 weeks period, you've got two of those who haven't got a win. Southampton get that first win against Everton, and then Ipswich go and get their first win against Spurs. But it wasn't just that they got the 3 points. It was they did it by showing that an underdog can go away from home against a side that is more fancied than them, be ambitious, and actually get a bit of a reward. And I think that was probably cast more light on, or probably created more frustration around the way in which Everton have set up going away to West Ham and Southampton, where you would say that they probably had more of a chance of getting a good result than you would have given Ipswich at Spurs, played with less adventure and came out with worse results. And then all of a sudden that just adds another layer of frustration over the first 11 games of the season. And then that, obviously we had the fortnight break, but that just heaps of pressure. And that's the same with Brentford tomorrow. Is it a must-win? All right, not for the reasons that we described, but if they don't win tomorrow, it then heaps pressure on to go in Old Trafford. Amorim's first Premier League game in charge. Look, I mean, I've watched Dyche take Everton to Old Trafford twice, over the past 2 seasons. They've lost both games comfortably, and both of them, I think, if it hadn't been for Jordan Pickford, could have been far, far worse. Like, you're nervous about that game, and you've got the Wolves game after. It's this game and the Wolves game, the big ones, because they can take so much pressure going into that, those 4 big games after Wolves, if they can get some good results at home.
Yeah. Does Brentford's away form help or hinder us then? Because
don't know. I don't know. They've got some good players and it's caused problems for us.
What I mean by that is, though, a team coming to Goodison Park who haven't won away from home, you would expect us to go out and take the game by the scruff of the neck.
That's what you would. Yeah, you'd hope that, wouldn't you?
The Everton way of late seems to be, well, if someone needs a win, if someone needs a goal, we'll hand it to them on a plate.
I don't think that works like that, does it, really, in football? I think...
I can provide evidence.
Yeah, no, but that doesn't necessarily mean that was the reason why it happened. You play the 90 minutes, don't you? You go out in the game, in the game, you play the 90 minutes. I would like to see us a little bit more on the front foot. Hackneyed, can you say front foot anymore? It's hackneyed old phrase. It's cliche now, isn't it? I'd like to see us do that a little bit more, and that maybe come from the team selection. So I don't really think it makes a lot of difference. It may make a difference if we go 1-0 ahead to Brentford's heads, but they've got some really good players, cracking coach, and it'll be a tough game. Picking up on Joe's point is right, isn't it? It's a must-win game for 2 reasons. It's like an insurance policy, isn't it, for the 10 games or that follows, and also Joe saying about Ipswich is, since we last won, all the 4 teams below us in the Premier League have all won. Yep. So we need to turn that tide a little bit. We need to change the narrative a little bit, but everybody else is catching up on us. We need to, and that's why the 3 points would be welcome. It's not a Frank Lampard going to West Ham in January 23 game, is it? By any stretch of the imagination, in terms of a must-win or whatever. And so I don't think Brentford will come up here like psychologically damaged by no away wins. I think it'll be, but we can use it to our advantage if we go ahead and play a little bit more adventure than what we have done.
they've been notoriously fast starters this season, certainly at home. We've scored quite a lot of goals away from home. So will the first opening, say 10, 15 minutes, have a major impact on how you foresee the game finishing off? Because if we concede, let's face it, if we concede, we very rarely come back and win.
Well, we got a point against Fulham, didn't we? Yeah, I mean, well, that's been a problem with Everton. Predates Dyche, doesn't it? Really, over the last.
Came back against Palace as well.
Yeah,
just to throw that in for a little bit of balance, like.
Yeah,
making a goal.
Yeah, so that's 4 points from losing positions at Goodison. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and no, but I know what you're saying. In with the mood music, with the fan base at the moment, if we go, it's probably in a different place to see as what it was against Palace. With the mood music, we do go 1-0 down, and it's not happening for us. You're right. It might be different to the Palace game, but I think I'm not going to use the second cliche of this conversation. I think the first goal is absolutely crucial tomorrow. I think for us and Brentford, and we need to make sure that it's us by, as I say, playing a bit more flair and adventure than what we have done, and it'll just be interesting to see how it pans out. But it's a big game for me.
I had to say that quietly, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't want anybody hearing it. It's a big game for me. I'll secretly say it's a big game.
Okay, well, I wanted to read this comment out before we move back on to Joe. So Richo65 says, "Hi all, I'm celebrating my 66th birthday today and retirement. Also hoping for an Everton and Southampton win to end the perfect weekend. Congratulations on both, but I'm not hoping for a Southampton win, to be honest."
Who is Southampton playing? Are they playing Liverpool, aren't they?
Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe that's why he said it then.
Yeah.
But to be honest,
Everton winning then.
No, I'd rather Southampton get beat. To be honest, I'm in that mindset now. I don't care.
You've battened down the hatches. You have, haven't you? You're in pure survival mode.
Absolutely. I feel like we've been in like that for weeks now. Well, congratulations, Richo, on your birthday.
Happy birthday! Congratulations on the
66,
retirement.
66, of course, is synonymous number with Everton.
Yeah, and retirement. Yeah, birthday. So
and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you for contributing to the stream and thanks for listening. Okay, Joe, we'll move on then. Sean Dyche's press conference yesterday. A lot was made over his comments over Illiman and Dye and the number 10 role or position. For context, if you don't know, I'll just read out his little quote. So, people keep telling me I should be playing him in the number 10. There's no evidence to suggest he should be playing in the number 10, but people keep telling me of my role as a manager, as they do. First off, who are these people that keep telling him? And number 2 question, is there any evidence that he should or shouldn't be playing as the number 10?
In terms of who the people are, well, I think the majority, again, I think a lot of supporters have come around to the idea that Ndiaye might be best off in the middle.
He's been waiting to say that for ages, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, I've been championing.
I know you have.
Since the start of the season.
Box office stuff, this.
Yeah. So that for a start. I actually think that I've asked Sean Dyche a lot about this, and it's interesting because I joined Blue Sky the other day and thought maybe it's a slightly more kind of an easier place to have a conversation with than what X has become, and ask people for kind of, and I'm still taking these submissions. I'll try and get back to as many as I can. What people wanted from Everton coverage and things like that, and one of the topics that came up was kind of more questioning on things like this. It's a difficult one for me because I think I get a lot of questions about style in press conferences, and I think it's difficult for me to do a lot about it because in the pre-match press conference nobody sees the questions that I ask, so I think I'm probably held to held to the standard of what people are seeing, but I don't have any involvement in that, so that's a little bit tough. Not that I'm going to say that I like.
It's worth pointing out here. There's actually two separate.
There's a set that because I'm in the print section, I speak to Dyche after the cameras have come off. So for instance, I asked him more about Ndiaye and his comments in the closed section yesterday, and I'll do a piece on that on Saturday morning when the embargo's lifted. So. But this is something I've been asking him a lot about, and I've been writing a lot about, and I think that's probably something I need to do better at, is signposting people to when I've kind of asked the questions that I think they want answered, saying, I have got the answer for you, here it is. But I think people need to make sure they don't confuse not liking the answer with not having asked the question. because, like I've repeatedly said, Dyche is very much of the opinion that Ndiaye isn't, certainly at this stage in his career, in his Everton career, a number 10. He believes that he should be playing out wide. He thinks that's the best place for him. Dyche is very much of the opinion that Ndiaye has very little Premier League experience. I mean, that's true. Like, I think he played a handful at best games in Sheffield United in the Premier League, but that is it. But anyway, going around the houses here. I've been asking this question long enough. I've been getting the answer long enough that it's always included. I think enough people, people keep telling me he's a central figure for me to be pretty confident that I think that includes people inside the club. I think this is a debate that is raging within the. I find it difficult to see how he wasn't signed with a view of at least being an option in the middle. And Dyche has taken a lot of pride from believing that he has proved critics that said he couldn't play on the wing wrong. Because Ndiaye has had some good performances on out wide this season. I would say he's also had some of his worst performances in recent weeks as clubs have worked out how to handle him, and he is much easier to handle when he's out wide. And you saw Kenny Tete do it very well against Fulham, and Southampton replicated this to a certain extent, and so did West Ham a little bit. Obviously, if he's playing against the sidelines, then you can trap him against it and limit his effectiveness. But yeah, I think it's a debate that's probably raging internally and externally in terms of answering your first question. And in relation to the second one, I think there's lots of evidence. I mean, the amount of Sheffield United fans that have come on to me saying, in response to those comments, saying he did well from a central role for them, albeit in the Championship. And I just think if you look at his skill set, I think that's where it is. You look at his skill set and you look at what he is doing on the pitch for Everton, and it is normally picking up the ball in tight situations, being able to go both ways, beat players, and either get a decent shot off or create a chance for somebody else. And I don't know why you don't look at that and you think that, I could get 50% more of that if I moved him to a central position so we can go both ways, rather than trap him out on the left. And then also, you throw in the additional defensive work that he's been asked to do. How much of the getting the ball in a tight space and beating the player is he doing 35 yards from his own goal, when really you want that 35 yards from the opposition goal and things like that. So
I've got an opinion on this as well, so I'll come on to that, but I'll come on to you first, Gav. I've got two comments which counter basically the debate. So the Blues have said just because he has a number 10 on his back doesn't mean he's played 10 most of his career. Yeah. James Graham says what he is doing, so what Dyche is doing at the moment isn't working. So what's he going to do? Carry on regardless? It just doesn't make sense.
I think that's a good, because I think both of those statements can be true, and to an extent are true. Like, he hasn't always played central role, and there's probably another debate around whether it's a number 10 or whether he's a support striker, which again, slightly different roles, but the premise being that he'd be more effective in a central role, it still remains. I think the last comment there is probably where a lot of the frustration comes into that. The attacking setup isn't working at the moment, so why don't you try something different? If he plays Ndiaye as a number 10 against Brentford and Wolves and it doesn't work, then fair enough. But at the minute, and we can all see that, and then maybe we can go a little bit like, and I'm surprised this has made a comeback in recent weeks, because we saw there were a lot of calls for Beto and Dominic Calvert-Lewin to play up front together last season. When we saw it, it really, really didn't work. But like, if we saw that it didn't work, fair enough. But at the minute, it's not like there's a really successfully functioning attacking unit at the minute. This Everton side has a number of problems, and a route to solving several of them could include Ndiaye going in the middle. It could prevent Dominic Calvert-Lewin from being so isolated. It could give Everton a better opportunity holding the ball up top, because Dwight McNeil's losing, is struggling to maintain possession and be that link man. It could potentially have more creativity because he could go both ways, as opposed to McNeil, who's obviously very one-sided. And also, another topic of this season so far has been the struggles of Mykolenko, and we know how well he has done in the past when he's had Dwight McNeil sitting in front of him as opposed to Iliman Dyche. You can potentially solve another problem by that. And then creativity-wise, probably the best chance that Everton have created in open play in the last round of fixtures was Jack Harrison in the final stage against Southampton when he cushioned that volley wide, could have scored. Where did it come from? Dwight McNeil's left foot out on the left. Yeah. So there are 3 or 4 problems that I think we can all see are issues that need solving. And there is a chance. I'm not saying it's going to be the perfect solution. We'll have to wait and see. But it feels like an obvious move to try and solve them would be to say, why don't we try and die in the middle for a game, McNeil on the left for a game, and see where it gets it. And I don't really know what we're seeing from the results of the performances over recent months to say that's not worth trying.
You kind of touched on my opinion there, but go on, Gav.
PhD on this, couldn't you? Really?
Where are you on?
Oh, Beam's not marking it.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
The professor.
C-.
Was it an interesting comment by Dyche, wasn't it? I found, there is no evidence.
Quite bullish a little bit, wasn't it?
Very.
Yeah.
As I say, I have asked this question a lot in a lot of different ways. And perhaps not always in front of in formats where the supporters can see, and he's firm in his beliefs on where he's at.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, it's just if he said there's no evidence that he can play number 10 in the Premier League, that might have covered off because people are saying, "Oh, but you said Sheffield United." And I say that was in the Championship, as we know, it was a different league. I'm going to sit on the fence. I don't see him as a natural number 10, right? Because I think he's too much of a dribbler. He likes the ball and he keeps possession. And I think a number 10 position for me, you've got to move the ball on quickly. You've got to have your eyes around the pitch. I think McNeil's good at that. Like quick thinking in and around the box. A couple of times a season he's played players in. With a nice little pass. Did the Calvert-Lewin at Palace and at Ipswich, wasn't it, for Michael Keane?
Yeah, Manil is for all that. I don't think he should be in. He's very, very good when everything's in front of him, when he's going forward, isn't he? If he's got the ball in a position where he can get it on his left foot, like he has got vision. He is his left foot is technically wonderful. We know he can strike a ball from 20, 25 yards. It's more the all-round game, isn't it?
I don't think that is I would think a number 10, attributes of a number 10 in that of being able to release the ball quickly, quick thinking. He's more of an endurer. You see, look, he's picking the ball deep and getting us up the pitch. He's more like an endurance player. That being said, I think Joe alluded to it, is the problem is if he plays out left, people just mark him, double mark him, and it really, as one of our main creative outlets, that causes us an issue, doesn't it? And that's what's happened in the last 3 or 4 matches. If he moves into number 10, the problem is in number 10, it's disappeared as a role, I think, over the years. Most people play now, don't they, with a defensive midfielder who'll just block the number 10 off. So what number 10s have to do now, a bit like Fernandez, I would say is it number 10, United, is you can go you've got free range to go around the pitch a little bit more. And I think if NJ played that, it'd be far more difficult to handle and track than if you just stick him out wide and you can just double mark him. If you give him a little bit more freedom to roam around the pitch, move left, move right, perhaps a little bit deeper, he becomes more elusive and harder to mark. And I can get that why you would want to play him on that basis, and also understand that if you played McNeil out left, he's makes us a little bit better in terms of getting the left foot across from a left footed player out wide, as it can be effective. So there's arguments to and for it. It was interesting. Dyche was talking about defensive responsibilities yesterday, wasn't he, about the number 10? And I think he was saying he was saying he quite likes McNeil for that thing. It's but he might not trust NJ, to move back. And he was saying that if you play 2 in the middle and your 10 doesn't drop back, you get outnumbered by the opposition 3. Is whether he doesn't trust NJ to have the same defensive responsibilities. So it's an interesting one. It'd be interesting to know what does the player think. Do we know? I've never heard him. I've never heard NJ speak. It'd be interesting to see what the players' thoughts are. So I can see both sides of the argument. What I can't say the argument of it is just always stick him up wide every single game and not change it. Yeah. It was interesting as well. He was asked about in-game management yesterday, wasn't it? About substitutions and he was talking about that, wasn't he? Really about why managers tend to play the same style during the game. And I think your point is during games, why don't you just move players around? If McNeil plays in the middle at 10 and Njai on left, why don't you change him after 20 minutes, 10 minutes before half time? And I think that's a sort of, in the interim, that's a sort of halfway house, isn't it, really? But I can see both, and ultimately you can't judge it until he actually plays there, can you?
No,
really?
I mean, you've totally stepped on my point there, Gav, but that's fine.
Which point?
About interchanging things around
well,
and stuff like that.
I'm just supporting you.
No, I was just joking.
Yeah.
We've got a comment here backing you up, Gav. So the Blues, spot on, Gav, and I isn't a Maddison or a Rodriguez with their creative passing. Young actually creates more chances than Ndai.
He's not had an assist this season, has he?
No, scored a couple of goals, obviously.
Yeah.
I think, from my point of view, me and Joe have been back and forth on this, and I'm not trying to backtrack in terms of what I'm saying whatsoever. What I will say is, I think I've been proven a little bit right in terms of how effective McNeil can be in the middle of the park. I think that goes to show with his goals and assists. He's up there. Don't get me wrong, they're not massive numbers, but he's certainly up there as in terms of number one in the team. What I will say is, I completely agree. If Sean Dyche, it smacks as a bit of stubbornness again from Sean Dyche.
There's a bit of Branthwaite's to repeat here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why aren't you playing Branthwaite? That type of stuff.
But the fact that he's not willing to change, or at least during the game, I wouldn't be too unhappy if McNeil and I start on the left and McNeil starts in the middle, but after, say, half an hour, say after like the last 15 minutes of the first half, which sometimes we usually wane in a little bit anyway, why not swap it around a bit? Why not change it around? If I'm being totally honest, again, I think McNeil's done well, but for the balance of the team, I'd probably say Decore's probably better suited playing as the number 10. And I think that proved it against West Ham, to be honest. There's an issue over Decore with his legs and how often can he play now, I think, with his age and his hamstrings.
When you say the balance of the team?
Well, McNeil's completely one-footed, isn't he?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think Decore brings Dominic Calvert-Lewin into the game a lot more than McNeil would as well. Yeah. And I think you're right, Joe, you mentioned in the past, looking at the stats and facts and stuff like that, McNeil has lost the ball, lost possession of the ball quite a bit, but I foresee Ndai doing that a little bit as well if he was to play as the number 10, because I just don't think he's got the support mechanism around him, or that position as the number 10. He's not going to have the support mechanism around him, because what you're going to do, it's not, the number 10 is not really there to retain possession. It's there to be creative. It's looking for those through balls. It's looking for those creative passes. So more often than not, it's not going to come off, so you are going to lose ball. You're probably going to get dispossessed because you might take that extra second or two to think about what you're going to do. And when there's nothing in front of you, you only got Dominic Calvert-Lewin in front of you, who's quite static, you're probably going to lose the ball. So I think my point is, that was a little bit concerning for me, the comment from Sean Dyche, because it did smack of, well, that's how I want to play, that's how I think we should play, that's me being stubborn. But I do agree with you on the sense that why not change it up a little bit if it's not working? And it clearly, certainly since the Ipswich game, following from the Ipswich game, it hasn't been working, has it?
No.
Yeah.
So there you
no,
go.
and we said before about Sakura, when he plays in that sort of role, he's far more defensively minded and physically capable of playing in midfield, isn't he? And making that midfield a three. So, that's the other aspect of this. It's not just a question of comparing Njai to McNeil, it's just throwing Decore into the mix and Lundstrom.
I think
played
Decore
number 10 in Germany,
is Dyche's perfect fit for that role. That's what he wants from it, and it was very, very effective in the first 12 months of Dyche.
I don't think he's physically there now to do that.
The last few months of the Bournemouth season, and then the first 6 months of last season. So, but obviously he had the hamstring issues. And I think, probably there's a degree of the fitness that you say, but there's also, we saw this a lot. I mean, I felt this was quite heavily exposed in the first game of the season against Brighton when he played in that. So often when you're getting the ball in advanced positions so rarely, you probably need someone that's a little bit more dynamic in what they can do with the ball, whether that's carrying it or finding a pass, and that's not Decore's strength. This all really what this all comes back to is the same issue that's been a problem for a couple of years at Everton, and that's the strength and depth in the squad. Because I think the big difficulty, and I think the number 10 role is part of that this season. The big difficulty is that I think the club, with the signings that it's made, has suggested that it wants to try and play a bit more expansively this season, and try and pivot from being a purely defensive side that has those quick counter attacks into something that can kind of build attacks more sustainably. But the problem is that whether it's Ndai or whether it's McNeil or whether it's Harrison or if it ends up being Lindstrom, really all of those players are going to be at their best in a central role if you give them the freedom to, I think you used the word, be elusive and to roam and things like that, and to have the defensive duties removed from them. But Everton don't really have a strong enough spine to be able to do that. Obviously that would improve if Brentwaite's back and stays fit. Obviously that helps. But we've had big issues in the centre midfield this season. And I think Mangala and Gay are probably the first choice now.
Yep.
But the big issue there is, if you have another purely attacking player in the mix, then most teams effectively in the Premier League effectively play with three in midfield. You then leave in a situation where you then get outnumbered in midfield, and then that becomes a problem, and it's trying to work out what to do. Obviously, I wonder if, particularly in a game, say like Fulham or things like, or Fulham I actually think if you play Ndai in a more central role and you give him a little bit of freedom, then rather than asking him to play a defensive role on their defensive midfielder every time he steps out, actually if you give him the freedom and to roam around that middle third of the pitch and drag the defensive centre midfielder out of position and have him looking over his shoulder all the time, then it's one less player for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to deal with, and things like that. But
that's where it makes sense for me playing him there as the 10. And saying is it's difficult, more elusive, and he's just getting blocked out wide now, isn't he? Playing wide left, and I think that's reflected in his numbers, shall we say? You can see why sometimes fans get a little bit. They get frustrated with Dyche when he's quite dismissive of stuff, and I think perhaps it's very difficult sometimes. He's just like doing a pod, isn't he? Say stuff, and about half an hour later, he should have said that differently. I think he could have phrased it differently for what I was saying. So we'll be looking at the options, but at the moment, McNeil's done well for us this season. Traore's been effective in that role. And we'll look at it game by game, depending on the opposition and stuff. But when he says, there's no evidence, it's sort of, you can see why it unnecessarily frustrates fans for me. And I can see why fans sometimes get a little bit, as I say, frustrated about some of Dyche's lines that he puts in press conferences. Even though in this case, he's justifiable if he says there's no evidence, because, he's not played, has he, in the Premier League. But it'd be interesting to see how that pans out.
My other concern just with McNeil, I know he's played there, for the majority of his time at Everton on the left. I just worry that he cuts inside far too much, and we're saying he gets crosses in and into Calvert-Lewin. He may have done that in the past, but I honestly don't think he does. I think most of the time he will cut inside. But if his directive is to play left, try and get obviously further down the wing as possible and get your crosses in, that's fine with me, McNeil playing on the left, because it gives Calvert-Lewin a chance to get in that 6-yard box and get on the ball. I would just be concerned that that's not how he would play the game, and he would always tend to try and cut inside.
Well, he has got the pace, has he, to beat a
That's what I mean. He's not, I say it all the time, he's not a modern day winger.
No, but I don't think Dyche is asking that of his players, or is he? The beauty of the Harrison ball is it came from deep. And I think that's kind of what he wants with his distribution. And if you've got McNeil sitting a little bit deeper like that, then he gives more protection to Mykolenko, and he can find someone in the box. And then if he's cutting inside, then you get the benefit of what he can do from a more central role without necessarily having him be the central figure.
Another thing that doesn't help with the wingers, having not poor performances, but not being able to be as attacking as they want, is the full-backs. Yeah. The full-backs just don't get up the field further enough for me. Mykolenko's having a poor season, we know that. But, if I go back to the two left-sided players that we've had, the best, Baines and PNR, the attacking threat from that team always came down the left-hand side for me.
Well, that's helped NJ, has it, really, because you've got no full-back to mark, and so you can just double mark him, can't you?
I think it's a mindset, though. Dyche clearly telling Mykolenko, don't go past this all the
But
time.
that's because Branthwaite's not playing behind him, isn't it, really? And he spoke about Branthwaite being good for the balance of the team yesterday, didn't he, in his presser? And, it's quite obvious that Mikalenko plays in a different way when Branthwaite's behind him than what he does when Michael Keane's behind him. And you saw that at West Ham to a degree in the first half, but he got forward a bit more, didn't he, at West Ham in the first half? So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It was just Dyche's comment was, it was a bit, I wouldn't say it's incendiary, but it sort of riles people. And
No, it does, but do you think he knows that as well?
probably, yeah, and that's fair enough. He's the manager. He's the one, the buck stops at him, doesn't it, really?
Okay, well, we're 47 minutes in, so we're actually nearly finished the pod. So we've still got quite a few bits to get through. What I'll ask Joe is injury news on Branthwaite. Obviously, Dyche said he is effectively available, so do you think we'll see him?
Yeah, I think we probably will. I think surely that debate's been resolved now. Like, I mean, as long as he's fit, I think he starts. He's been training all week, so yeah, I'd be surprised not to see him in the starting lineup tomorrow. And McNeil again training all week, so he's available. I mean, it'd almost be very Dyche to just start and then die in number 10 now, wouldn't he? And just troll us all after all our discussions.
Stop Branthwaite in the number 10.
That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I from his comments and from what we're hearing, I'd fully expect Branthwaite and McNeil to both be available. And I think if Branthwaite's available, I think you have to play him.
Okay. You're going to jump in, sorry?
No.
I thought you were going to jump in. Okay, well, we'll move on before we start talking about starting lineup and predictions. APT Rules, Gav?
APT Rules, Associated Party Transactions.
Yeah, so just for context, the Premier League clubs have approved changes to the competition's Associated Party Transaction Rules. Breaking news this morning. What does this mean, and more importantly, what does it mean for Everton from your point of view?
Well, what it means is that the Premier League have revised the rules to take account of the judgment in the Man City case, which was month or so back, just to tinker around with the rules, because there were some bits that they said was unlawful, was the word they used, and one of them was to do with shareholder loans. So that's basically money off your owner that's given to the club, and which we benefited from Mashiri, obviously to build the stadium or not build the stadium, depends on which bit of the commission you want to believe. And the argument made by City, and I totally justify that, is that I think it was justifiable, was that it's basically free money. You get, if you were to go to a bank and get a loan, you're paying an interest charge on it. If you've got a very rich owner who can give you money, and as a shareholder loan, there's no interest on that you would pay, and that was seen to be a bit unfair and not equitable, for all clubs, not just City coming from, and so the commission found in their favour, and they had to change. There's a couple of rules they've changed, but the one affecting Everton, that's the one, because we've had money from Mashiri, and what they said was, if you have a loan from your shareholder, it will be tested for fair value. So if you get a loan from main shareholder, we would apply an interest rate to that, and that would then go onto your PSR. So if you borrow 100 million quid, you get 100 million quid off your owner, we will put, say, an interest rate of 5% against that, whatever. So on your PSR, we'll add another 5 million onto your PSR position. And so that obviously, in theory, has an impact on Everton, because Mashiri's been funding the club through shareholder loans since 2016-17. The thing, though, from I spoke about this briefly on Monday, didn't I? I think it came up, is retrospectively applying the rules, because and so what they've said this morning, and again, this is only what I'm not seeing the full press release and the full impact is. The belief is if you've had loans before 2021. Then this won't apply, this fair market test of giving an interest rate applying to it, and then that will affect your PSR. Won't apply for loans given before 2021. For loans since 2021, but this is where it gets a little bit complicated, is there may be a chance they'd apply an interest rate to that. But it all depends whether it's a continuation of an existing loan or it's a new loan from your shareholder. It's a bit complicated. How that plays out, I don't know, regarding Everton. But I'm not sure how much money we've had off Mashiri since December 2021. So that's the impact. We may have it, may impact on us a little bit. The other thing within that, though, is according to our accounts, we've not got shareholder loans. It's all equity. So it then becomes an argument between the Premier League. We just said in our accounts, those shareholder loans, we don't exist anymore. It's equity. That's why Farhad's not getting his money back, you know. So that's an accounting thing. And so that may play out with the Premier League. But it's a good move for Everton. I think that they're not going to retrospectively go back to 2016-17 and say, right, we're going to apply all that money. We're going to apply an interest rate of 5%. So that's another, over that period, adds 25 million to your PSR. And so you breach PSR by a higher amount than before. I don't think that won't happen. But it's an interesting thing going forward as well. You know, when the Freakins come in, you know, perhaps, you know, we spoke about Freakins needing to fund us and how going forward that may impact on us. But as it stands, I think it's a decent result for Everton. But the most interesting thing is the way we've reported to have voted on this. Because when these rules came in, that being changed, and then we went back in February, we voted with Manchester City. And then the result was 14, I think we can't remember what it was, 14-6 to bring him in. But in this case, the reports are this morning, it's 16-4-2, and you know the 20 clubs voted 16-4 in favour of the rules, and City are one of the four, obviously, with new reporters being them, Newcastle, Villa, and Forest, who always vote against the Premier League, but we voted with the Premier League this time rather than against in February, and I think that's really interesting because the Freakins are not the new owners, but they've now the club switched horses from the City side to the America, the Middle Eastern bloc, which includes Aston Villa, Newcastle, and Chelsea to a degree had a little bit of Saudi ownership. You now voted to the other side of the Premier League bloc, which is largely now American owners, and I don't think that's uncoincidental. And going forward, that sort of will dissipate City's power in the Premier League because of the American ownership. That will largely vote against them. And it's just interesting. I also think as well, and this is really interesting, I've probably read, again, too many conspiracy theories here, is I think the Premier League are obviously canvassing clubs for support because they want these rules to go through. You know, with the independent regulator, they want to see that the regulator comes in and sees that the Premier League is all joined up. You know, there's no big factions. You know, there's no people voting against the Premier League and not bringing the rules in. They want to be seen to be running a steady ship. So consequently, I think there's obviously been a conversation between the Premier League and Everton for us to jump ship. I would imagine, because he spoke to all the Premier League clubs. I'm just wondering whether we had a couple of cards to play in that. I think one of them is get the ownership thing agreed with the Freakins as quickly as possible. They know the owners, directors test. And the other thing is, wouldn't surprise me, is the outstanding charge over the interest loans with the Premier League, which we've still got to go in front of the Commission, whether that came into it as well. We had a bit of leverage with the Premier League. And it'd be interesting to see what that conversation was, because that's what I would have said. Well, if you want to vote for you, this is what you can do for us. Premier League, you know, a couple of these things that we want off you, you know, make sure it happens. And so I think the associated party transactions, I think it's we voted for it because it favours us. I think, you know, hopefully the noise around it for the moment won't affect us. More important thing is where the club voted compared to where it's voted previously, where we voted with the City block. We've now switched horses to the American ownership block. That's really important going forward.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for obviously trying to explain that, Gav. It's we were talking.
Complicated.
No, it's complicated. We were talking about it before we came in on air. Joe, I think what my concern with regards to it, it's interesting the way Everton have voted, different to how they would have voted in the past. But I guess now this prevents the Freaking group from, you know, coming up with their own sponsorship deals for other companies that they own, and you know,
it doesn't prevent that, but it means that they'll be assessed by fair market value. So basically, you can't use your affiliated.
But what is fair market value?
Pump in. Well, the Premier League will kind of oversee that, won't they? But I think first on the APT, it doesn't really probably won't really affect Everton. If the takeover, Everton have £450 million of shareholder loans with Fard Mashiri. If the takeover is completed by January the 11th of next year, then those shareholder loans will be wiped out because the Freakins would have dealt with them one way or another, and that's essentially the deadline. If it's all sorted by then there's just no retrospective issue for Everton to deal with. Takeover's not dealt with by then, and those shareholder remains, like Gav says, what money was provided at what date, etc., becomes a little bit of an issue. But the knock-on effects aren't going to be too serious, I don't think. So this is a good result for Everton in that respect. In relation to your point there about ultimately this is going to prevent little financial sleight of hands, little loopholes, work around the rules whereby rich owners can funnel money into clubs and perhaps avoid some of the more stringent implications from things like a PSR perspective. I think it's understandable why Everton would not want that system to be in place, particularly under the Freaking Group. That's because what it essentially does, it prevents an arms race. Now look, the Freaking Group might have more money than 5 or 6 owners currently in the Premier League, might have more money than 10 or 12 or 14, but one thing they're not going to do, it's not going to have more money than Newcastle or Manchester City's owners and any of those other Middle Eastern kind of often nation state backed things. So it prevents an arms race that Everton are never going to be able to win, and for that it's closer to. This doesn't make anything. This doesn't just by no stretch of the imagination makes it a fair playing field. There's still so much competitive advantage that is baked into the clubs that are already the clubs that haves over the have-nots and things like that. So Everton aren't going to it's not going to make it easier for Everton to play catch up, but what it will do is prevent some of those clubs that are already in these better positions from going further and further away, or at least it'll cut off one avenue for them to do that. So
did you have tinkered around with that bit of the rule? It would be assessed per fair value, but in that sponsorship that came out of the City case, if a company shows that they've got a great reason to give sponsorship more than just fair market value, they'll probably consider it. But this is not the end of the matter we're pointing out, because there was like our interest rate commission where they left some of the bits. For the later date, the original commission with City, I've got to come back and explain some of the points they made in the commission. Really, and that's going to come back in the next couple of months. So that's the first thing, and I think the general impression is that City will probably take Rory as we sit here.
But you'd have to say they hopefully are, like you said, pretty confident that things will work out in Everton's favour, because they're going to look pretty stupid if they don't vote in favour of this rule.
Yeah, and what happens depends what the next vote will be. But we've not heard the last. What I'm saying is we've not heard the last of the matter. This is not going to go away, because I think this is very much an interim step. The Premier League
and Everton voting the other way wouldn't have changed the result, because it's a 14-6, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would they have known that though? Was it a blind vote?
I think the Premier League probably knew where people were going to vote before. I think what was said was that if they knew the vote was going to go through in their favour, they would have postponed it. And the interesting thing was the meeting started at 9 o'clock.
It's 16-4 the vote was, so Everton it would have been 15-5.
No, he still would have lost.
Yeah, and because Chelsea, I think, switched horses as well, is. The meeting starts at 9 o'clock, and I think the impression was from football that at 5 o'clock we're there.
Goal line predictions, Joe. Gonna go.
You've got to start Brantwaite.
Any movement on the full-backs, anything like that? Just keep it the same.
I would like to see Patterson get a run at right back at some point. I think Ashley Young's done well there, relatively well there recently. So you think you'd be hard pushed to change that. Just trying to think what the West Ham feels like so long ago, doesn't it already? But I think I'd probably go Mangala and Guy in the middle. Yeah, we know where I sit on the Ndai McNeil front. So, but yeah.
Just revisit that argument. Yeah, I think it'd be pretty similar to is McNeil fitter? He said, and a bit of pace at home to try and get round the back of their defence.
Yeah,
I think pretty straightforward, isn't it? If Brantwaite comes back,
I think the team pretty much picks itself, and obviously debate over the number 10. That's fine, but I think just get out there, take the game by the scruff of the neck, get into Brentford, because if you don't, excuse me, this cough, they'll get into us. They'll start off quick, and if they do that, we're going to be in trouble. And
it's a difficult one though, isn't it? Because if you go we're going to go on the front foot and try and be aggressive and get that first goal, then do you leave yourself more susceptible to their fast start?
No, I mean, I'm not saying go gung ho. I'm just saying we need a better performance than what we've seen previously, don't we?
And I agree with you when they got the win over Brentford under Dyche, the first one, when Neil scored in the first minute. When they got the big win last season away, it was the first Premier League win of the season. They scored early doors in that. Sean Dyche, Everton have been at their best under Sean Dyche when they have started fast and they've blitzed opposition. It hasn't happened loads of times, but it has happened in periods. And I think they need to kind of. Everton aren't a team with, whether it be all down to the squad or whether it be down to the manager's approach to substitutions on the final stage of the games or whatever combination of that. Everton often aren't a team that can dictate play and the passage of the momentum in the final stages of games, because they can't turn to their bench and make lots of changes, and where they do, they have a manager that probably prefers not to. They can do it in the first 15-20 minutes, and I think that's where they need to be more effective at hitting teams.
Prediction then?
I'm gonna go 2-0 Everton.
Talking about fast starts, McNeil's goal 2 years ago was the fastest winning goal in Goodison history by an Everton player.
Was it?
35 seconds, 1-0, yeah. And so I'm going to go for 1-0 as well. It's McNeil's birthday today, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I'm going to, I'm worried about this game. I am worried about this game, and I think Mbeumo, team moves from the Brentford side, Ethan Pinnock, Johan Visser, Brian Mbeumo all look fit to play. They all missed international duty with Knox. But Thomas Frank thinks they're all going to be available for him. I mean, Mbeumo and Visser have scored more goals this season than Everton have combined.
Yeah.
And they've got 15 to Everton's 10. So, hopefully, that doesn't,
Going off on a tangent, I'm still amazed, with all due respect of Brentford, why certainly Mbeumo is not a
I think a lot of distraction from Ivan Toney. He was obviously a very, very good player, but I think
he's a tremendous player. He's one of the best players out the top six, I think.
But I'm worried going into this game, and I think that's probably a little bit of maybe hoping for what's going to happen. But I'm hoping that Everton I'm hoping that Dyche does what he's done in the past against Brentford and just finds the formula, and they make all our lives a little bit easier for at least a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, there was stats that somebody mentioned in the press conference: fewest goals conceded by any club in the Premier League over the last 7 games. So, not all doom and gloom, is it?
Did you give a prediction? What did you say?
1-0.
1-0 to Everton.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was on an alternative podcast yesterday. My
Moonlighting.
New best friends from the View from the Bullens, and I said 2-0. So I'm not going to change my prediction for that. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Joe. I think 2-0. I think I said Dominic Calvert-Lewin would score as well.
This ends our sequence of Saturday games this season, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Every game's been there for Saturday, hasn't it, this season in the Premier League?
Okay, any final thoughts before we do finish off?
I've got a book out to tell you.
And you can find the link.
I found the link, yeah.
In the podcast description, in the YouTube description as well. You've got a podcast coming out as well, or a podcast show coming out as well.
Yes, so, very good with Chris.
Keep an eye out for that, yeah. Joe, anything else to finish off with, all good?
Yeah, just hope everyone has a great weekend.
Absolutely. Okay, that is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like, give us a subscribe if you haven't already, drop us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify, and most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Gav Buckland and Joe Thomas, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.